I talked on our last members blog about what the day-to-day life looks for me in an affiliate season. It's probably interesting for people to hear of like what does a director of hitting actually do. The off season is just as interesting and way different. So people say like, what does your job look like every day? And I say, well, it's really seasonal and it really looks different from season to season, meaning the wintertime. So in the wintertime, I'm in the Wrigley offices every day in the front office. In times where COVID isn't that bad, that we all get together in person and we really evaluate. We start the year evaluating players. We start the year, when I say the year, we start the off season because that's really where the magic is made. We start the off season evaluating players and evaluating staff. And so we say, where does this player fit in with us right now? What are the things he did well? What are the things that didn't go as well? Evaluating your staff, and those are going to be person-to-person evaluations and evaluations as staffing for next year. Where do we feel like we can grow? What candidates are out there that can make us better? And that staffing process that happens next takes a lot of time. You can imagine how thoroughly a candidate is vetted for the different jobs that we have, from the big league level to your lowest level minor league coaches that possibly are just breaking in for the first time. The amount of resumes that come in is great, but I'll say probably like any profession, and maybe more so in professional sports and certainly baseball, there are so few jobs in baseball that from the collegiate level and the professional level alike, that the network is really pretty tight. Like you probably know somebody in every organization or at every school, and can get fairly tied in pretty quickly in your 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon way. So we spend a lot of time on the phone. We spend a lot of time vetting like potential candidates. Of course, coaches move around just as much as players do. So you get ties with different organizations as you get older, and coaches move around of people you've had experience with in the past. When you get to the interview process, those interviews can be 5 hours a day, if not more, and sometimes even, depending on the job, interactive in person in terms of like actually to see them working with a player and doing some work. So it's extensive. When we have multiple candidates, it could take me a week to 10 days of just interviewing for one job, and I'm really not doing anything else. So once your staffing gets taken care of, and generally that happens by Thanksgiving in most cases, you're prepping for what normally is the winter meeting. So now we're talking about off-season acquisitions. And I really enjoy that portion of my job. There's a ton of people that have influence, and ultimately your pro scouting director, your GM, and your president are going to make the final decision on the players that you bring into the org, as they should. But there's a lot of people that give input for that. And I usually give the input on how I feel like this hitter is going to perform over a longer period of time. Or in some minor league acquisitions, is there something that we feel like their previous organization was missing out on that we may have even more information on, that we feel like we can make a change with that. So it's like finding some diamonds in the rough out there that we feel like have the aptitude and wherewithal to make an adjustment that we could really capitalize on. So those are really fun projects for me, and we've certainly had those over the last couple of years. So you're talking about professional acquisitions there. Then around the Christmas and the New Year, we're preparing for the amateur draft. So the amateur scouting meetings for the next June or July draft, I'm not even sure what the date of it is this year, it changes, take place in January. So right now, I am going through our list of our top prospects and kind of doing the same thing. How do I feel like this person's swing mechanics are going to play? I'll go through and review at bats so we can evaluate pitch selection, balance, just really taking a holistic approach at what this hitter looks like from just my eye view. We can tie in some data if we have it on there, but I'm kind of doing more an evaluation the way I did it when I was a college coach and recruiting that way. I've taken that type of approach to it. There are some certain things that I can do with video that I keep pretty close to the chest, that I feel like I can derive objective measurements from 2D video that is really interesting. I would like to share with you, but I'm pretty certain the other teams, most of them don't know how the process that I use to do that. So that'll have to sit for a couple years until other people are doing it, and then I'll give out the secret sauce on that. But that's a fun way to evaluate guys and kind of see where we feel like other organizations may not be valuing certain players as much as we do, or vice versa. Sometimes guys that we feel like are over influenced in having a higher draft status at one time. So that's very interesting. And what it does, it allows me to cross a lot of different departments and learn a ton. I learned, especially during COVID, very, very limited in our interaction with any coaches or players, but we had a ton of different Zoom meetings with potential draftees and listening to our scouts, what they feel like they valued, what they talked about with the players, and the questions that I would ask. It was an opportunity for me to learn from a perspective that I haven't really heard that much before. I was never really a professional scout. I interact with scouts all the time, but it gave me a much different appreciation for their job and the thoroughness of it when you're talking to them every day over the course of months. And finally, it seems like I shouldn't leave this one out, working with players. And that's probably, honestly, at this point in my career, this is what I do the least. I write player plans, I'll carry them out. I have some certain players that I've had just for 5 to up to 15 years that we still have that relationship, and they'll still work with me. In a future members blog, I'll kind of go through what I do for that postseason analysis and how I develop player plans going into the offseason and how we work with that. But that's probably the area that I'm doing the least right now, is like one-on-one instruction with players. It's way more administrative for me and way more very encompassing, where you have your people underneath you now that are carrying out what you feel like you need to do as an organization or a facility to make sure it runs efficiently every day. And you're relying on good people that you hire to take care of that. So that's kind of an objective view of what I do in the off season and how my job is really, really different than what I do during the year.